Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Saturday Morning Dungeons and Dragons show. My name is Jordan, with a silent PH in the middle, and I'm joined always by my wonderful co-host Sir Lucian over at Sir Lucian Gaming. Good morning, Mr. Lucian.
Good morning. I have a beholder over my shoulder.
Yeah, there's a beholder over your shoulder. That's crazy. Maybe we have Dungeons and Dragons. Mm-hmm. And then maybe we'll do a clothing line called Beholders and Shoulders.
Yes, jackets and something.
Yeah, I like that.
What rhymes with Trask? I like it.
We're gonna backwards config this. What rhymes with the monster we want to use? Yeah,
something
too funny.
Mimics.
Mimic, yeah. Welcome everybody. Lots of news to talk about. If you've been living under a rock, you probably haven't heard that there is late Sunday last week, so literally like 6 days ago, Wizards of the Coast announced at the end of their D&D celebration that they're working on the next edition of Dungeons & Dragons, and it was said to be backwards compatible with 5e, so really a lot of people are speculating about this, which we'll probably speculate too. And everyone's throwing out, like, is this a 6th edition? Is like a full new edition? Or is this a 5.5? Like, they're just going to, like, tweak a little things. Ultimately, game/book company wants to sell games/books. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm kind of interested, but what I feel like you watched this and know more about this than I do. So
yeah, I watched this a couple times. Hey, Shazar here. Thanks for the hosting. I watched it live, and then I went back and watched the reaction from Ted.
Oh yeah,
and he was crazy. He was like, "I got it. F you, all you people who told me I was right." I mean, he went crazy on his live. So if you have a chance to go back and watch that, it's pretty funny. He does a more stripped down one later on. That's like, here's the facts, and not me getting super excited. But it was interesting because they had a panel of 4 people. And they were dodging around little hints and things, and then you would get a big bombshell on one, and then they would kind of hint some more things, and you get a bombshell, and it kept going. So yeah, 2 major releases of classic campaign setting next year, and a peek at a third. So they said there would be like a sneak peek that you would see that then would be released later in 2023.
And that's another classic campaign?
Yeah, so of 3. So that's 3 classic campaigns.
It's gotta be, well, I guess there are a lot. I was thinking about making a video to be like, how many campaign settings are there?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot. And if you think of like a classic campaign setting, I always think of the internal ones that they did, like Planescape. But like Lankmar is a classic campaign setting that Dungeons and Dragons had, Advanced D&D had a thing for, and so I don't know. I'm wondering if if it's just going to be Planescape, Dark Sun, Greyhawk, Birthright, the major ones.
Yeah, and the notes I put in here is kind of how they're happening. So like as the beginning of it, that's the first kind of bombshell that they drop on us, and they talk. And so we start. You obviously while you're listening, you start speculating. And he tells us, Ravenloft was one that happened this year because we knew there was a classic. We knew about 3 before this. So Ravenloft was confirmed as one of the ones that they went back and that we have a classic setting book on now. But there's still 2 coming up, and we'll get teased a third. So in reality, that's 4 classic setting books that we know are going to be on our shelves by the end of like 2023, whenever that happens, right at the end. They talked about that. This was the big one that kind of got everybody buzzing is that those products, those 2 classic campaigns, were coming through in new formats that they'd never used, formats that we had never seen before. And everybody immediately thinking digital, like, is it a digital only release? Is it some type of VTT starts getting thrown around? Are they gonna not do D&D Beyond stuff anymore? Everything starts flying that first 5 minutes into the show, because you're like, what is it? Now I think Ted found some more tweets out there. I didn't go back and put all the notes. He did a bunch of digging after this, and I think he found that Ray also confirmed that they're not just digital formats, they are different print formats.
Yeah, I heard that too. Different print formats. And so that made me wonder,
what does that mean?
are they just saying box sets? Like, are we
Well,
just going back
Ted's.
to box sets? Because,
Yeah.
so, you buy a Spelljammer box set, it would come with a big fold-out map. It would come with, like, maybe an adventure. A lot like the Ravenloft, the Curse of Strahd, like, revised edition that they came out with. That was in the box. And there was no hardcover book in that. It was all a bunch of, like, soft cover. But, like, here's
could
all
be
the
like
monsters.
Slipcase
Here's
stuff.
Yeah. And it made me wonder if they're going back to that, but that was such a weird thing, like a print that you've never seen before. And I'm like, what? Is it going to be like a puzzle that unlocks the book? Like, it's a book. Like, you're not rewriting the world here. Like, it's, I don't know. Or you're not changing the face of gaming.
Beetle and Grimm was the other thing I was thinking too. Yeah, like their premium box sets that Beetle and Grimm are doing. I was thinking maybe D&D's getting in on a little bit of that because they've been doing the slipcase stuff, like the and I think those look good and have alternate covers so you can spend a little more on premium ones or whatever. So maybe they're diving into a little bit more of that type of a product route. I was trying to think of what are the other type of print products. I mean, they couldn't possibly release a campaign in a magazine, right? Like, here's a magazine that is basically all Spelljammer or something, and here's a magazine that's all Dark Sun, or here's a magazine that's all this. I mean, are they going to bring that back? I mean, what other print things are there? Newspapers, books, magazines? What am I missing? Box sets.
Yeah, I can only think that it's going to be a box set, and I can only, or the other idea I had is that maybe they'll be like, here's the Dungeon Master edition, and here's the player edition. So, like, if we're going to play in Wild Beyond the Witchlight, then players can go out and buy the player edition, which has the races and the new stuff that they need and information about the world to an extent, but then the Dungeon Master has the full adventure. And I don't know if that is something that they're thinking about doing, because then when a new adventure comes out, you're selling more than one book for a group of 5 people,
Well, the good thing is, we'll know right away, because if they're releasing 2 and teasing a third, one of those has to be at the beginning of the year. At least one is probably somewhere in the middle of the year, and there's other books being released next year. That was just the classic stuff, so that almost seems like on the side of maybe some of the other stuff. So the next thing they talked about was that there will be some blog posts coming up. We're keeping an eye out for them to talk about the product format change soon. So we should know more about that probably within the next month or so. I'm guessing they'll start talking about what those are. And then they kind of dropped the bombshell that they've already begun work on a new version of the game. And they didn't give it a name. They didn't say how far they're into it. One of the things they did say is that there should be more info coming up starting 2022. It is in relation to having a 50-year anniversary set created for what is Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition right now. And it's going to be the 2 slipcases that have, the core books and then all the extras, which is
the new book,
together.
The Mordenkainen book. Which is basically all the monsters kind of combined into one, is what I was reading.
And you can buy 2 slipcases that have them, and then you could have everything you need to play basically what's out with 5e besides. And they called it besides
adventures, I guess.
Yeah. They had a term for it, but I forget off the top of my head. But it was like, they're not putting the Magic the Gathering stuff in there. They're not putting Tal'Dorei in there. They're not putting, some of that stuff in there. Eberron's not in that stuff. It's just the core mechanics and the core rules. Oh, they called it system agnostic rules that they put out. So system agnostic rules.
So like Artificer is in Tasha's, but Warforged isn't. So like there's certain things that are like this race or whatever is kind of really tied to just that campaign setting. So,
the new edition will be apparently compatible with the 5e version. So this throws it, because they make that first statement, we're working on the new version, the new edition. I forget what was the word they used, but they didn't give it a name. So immediately you're thinking, here it is, 6th edition confirmed. We've got it. We're going to 6. But when they say it's backwards compatible, then you start seeing in chat everybody saying, "Oh, this is 5.5 now." But nobody ever called that. And I don't think Dungeons and Dragons ever called their books 3.5.
They did. I think so.
The company did, or did all of us that purchased them call it 3.5?
No, because they re-released the
I wanted to look it up. I forgot to do that.
Yeah,
today.
they re-released the player's handbook. And
they called
things
it
like
3.5?
that because there were lots of broken mechanics. And so I don't think you see a lot of 3E only books. It's usually all 3.5 because they caught it and they were like, ugh. But yeah, I think they were trying to say, like, this is the fixed version, please buy this kind of a thing. But you're right, I don't know. Like, Wizards of the Coast didn't want to call 5E 5E. It wasn't until the fans really latched on that they're like, well, it's 5th edition, Yeah. They wanted to call it D&D Next.
I went and looked. So. Dungeon Master's Guide does not say 5th edition anywhere in it. I looked through the whole thing. So they didn't even name it that, even though that's what we called it. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to see if they'd put in there a 3.5 edition somewhere in actual print. Somebody's saying it's on the cover, but I'll have to go and look to see if that's true. So that's where the 5.5 part starts to come from. So if it's backwards compatible, does that mean we're just a half step rendition from 5? Are we a full version away from 5? We'll have to see. Are they going to try to control the name? I'm surprised they didn't, because if you want to control that narrative from a marketing standpoint, I feel like you'd want to control that narrative from a big company like that. You wouldn't want to put that out there and then let your community come up with its own name, and then it doesn't match any of the marketing stuff you do. Because let's say everything they're printing right now says 6th edition, but the whole community thinks it's 5.5 that's coming.
Yeah. It
seems weird to me that they didn't put a name on it so they could start getting that out there, and so that the community didn't go crazy with their own. Is this 5.75? Maybe it's 5.25, or what are we dealing with here?
I guess we'll have to see how backwards compatible it is. Yeah. Because, and here's, I think it will be 5.5 if I can use this new rule set and play Out of the Abyss. Mm-hmm. Like, I can take an old 5e adventure, but I can use the new rule set. Like, that would mean backwards compatible to me. Or I can use my original player's handbook and play a new adventure that they've written for this. Like, and if it's really that synergistic, then it feels like not a new addition. It feels to me like they just kind of added some more extra rules. Like, we could say, well, Tasha's and Xanathar's, that's 5.5, because if you play just the player's handbook, that's 5th edition. So in order to be a whole brand new edition, it's got to be different somehow, Yeah,
I think your core combat has to be different somehow. Like, either you change how rounds work, you change how initiative works, you change monster stat blocks enough that they're no longer compatible, and you actually need something. Like, if you look at a 4E stat block, it's very different than a 5E stat block. So anybody could look at those two things and say, these seem to come from different game things, even though it's a related game.
Yeah.
But when you look at like a Pathfinder stat block and you look at a Dungeons & Dragons, they're similar enough that you might say, oh, these must be the same, at least close to the same game, or pretty similar, because it has the AC, it has all the stats, it has the same skills in there. So to me, if they're changing, going to 6, are they adding new skills? Are they expanding any of the stats? Are they changing any of the combat orders or things that you can do? Are they adding something called like a bonus action and then a quick action or a swift action or a free action? Or are they doing any of that kind of stuff where they add in a whole nother core thing, or who knows?
And you're right. I don't know. Obviously none of us know, but like, if you think back to Dungeons and Dragons, like, we had BX D&D, or like basic expert Dungeons and Dragons, and then coupled with that was advanced Dungeons and Dragons. But it wasn't until I think it was like 10-12 years later they made advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition. And so that 2nd edition was a revising of the original rules and kind of getting rid of the basic rules. Like, we're going to shed these. You don't need basic anymore. It's just advanced now. And then with 3rd edition, you know, they changed everything. Like you said, that's what we think of an edition change, because combat changed. You have like an ascending AC score. You have these feats. You have all this other stuff that you're adding to it.
Yeah, I've tried to convert an old edition to 5e.
Yeah, and so 3rd edition was very different. And then 3.5 fixed some problems with 3rd edition. And then 4th edition was very different. But 5th edition felt a lot like 3rd and felt a lot like advanced AD&D or AD&D 2nd edition. So I don't know. Like, I thought it was very telling that what's his name, who's leading the product line, had an advanced D&D shirt on in that video. And it made me think, like, 50th anniversary, are you going to make like a huge box set that's like, here's
Advanced
BX,
5th edition,
AD&D, 3rd, 4th, 5th, like, and our new one, and like, here is all of D&D for $800. You can own this. Like, so
that would be cool.
It would, but
updated
I
artwork
wonder,
and oh wow.
and I wonder if it was like, I wonder if this new edition they want to incorporate all the working things from older ones too, and that's not like I'm gonna bring back Thaco or anything like that, but the Wild Beyond the Witchlight has a character named Thaco. Like, they're clearly playing at something, and I think there's little hints that I don't know. I think so I've been playing a lot or reading a lot and stuff of Old School Adventures, which is a streamlined, cleaned up version of original BX D&D. And that being said, like, AD&D is very confusing, but what if Wizards of the Coast took that and made it clarified and used their like knowledge of layouts and stuff now to like help a user read through this? I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, let's do that, and now let's re-release some of our classic adventures and stuff.
Yeah, because you know who you're taking a shot at then? You're taking a shot at the OSR then.
Yeah.
You were saying, you know what? You guys have taken our game, said you loved our old game so much you're trying to revive our old game because you won't play our new game. Well, guess what? We're coming back for our old game too. Could you imagine?
Yeah. And I think, you know, if I was talking about this with I was talking about this with some friends, and if you think about it, like, I firmly believe that Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins and all, I think the people at Wizards really see the value of the OGL and the SRD, where people are allowed to make things for their game because it lets them sell more games and it lets them be at the top of the RPG market.
Yeah. Because
all of these people, and Wizards specifically tried to make a 4th edition where they controlled everything. And controlling everything led to Pathfinder being number 1, because all these people could make stuff for Pathfinder. Now, the good news of this is we will always have the OGL. Like, they can't revoke it
That's
in any
there.
way. It's always going to be there.
Always going to be.
But I know that those Hasbro CEOs are sitting there and they're looking at it and they're just like, well, that's a $2 million Kickstarter. Where's our cut of that? You know, and they're looking at it from a financial standpoint where it's like, why are we giving these other companies for free the ability to profit off of our game? And I think that they're looking at that saying, we don't want to do that. So with 6th edition, like a new edition, they would have the rights to not release something for that. And so it's interesting that they say this will be backwards compatible, meaning I think I kind of took that as you can use the 5e SRD to make something for this new edition, but you're never going to be able to make something for 6th edition unless you go through the DMsGuild, so that when you publish it, we own it and we can do what we want with it. Like, they want their cut. So it's like, I don't want to see these $1 million Kickstarters anymore. I want to see people funneling their product through the DMsGuild so that the Hasbro CEO can look at it and be like, oh, good, we got, 40% of that guy's thing for using our game. So, anyway, that's my speculation about all of this. So I think it's going to be backwards compatible in the sense that they're never going to get rid of the OGL, the open game license, but 6th edition is going to be a lot more restrictive. And I'd be very surprised if you're going to have another Paizo, another Pathfinder come out And maybe it's not Pathfinder, but like I could just see all sorts of companies taking the 5e SRD, improving it, and releasing their own game, just like what happened with 4th edition. So,
and it's a bombshell when you go to a new release like that, because are they gonna D&D Beyond or any game that has a license with them? They probably have a license for 5th edition at that point. That means all negotiations are back on the table if D&D Beyond or these other VTTs or Roll20 want to work and have that new content come in.
Yeah.
So that's they're renegotiating, I'm assuming, all of that. Or do they not negotiate that, and do they start actually bringing that stuff in-house? Their own VTT, their own online character creator, their own magazine online, which they have with Dragon Plus. They have...
Well, and you're right. I don't know. Like, Wizards is too small to do that, I think.
But not Hasbro.
But if Hasbro's willing, and that's what Wizards has always been good at, is that they have their intellectual property. They have Dungeons and Dragons, and then they hire a game company to make Dark Alliance. Right. Or they hire this person to make an MMO, or they hire this person to make a comic book. But
they've started hiring.
But that's the thing. Like, didn't they buy some a couple game companies? So it makes me wonder if that's where they're pushing, which would be a real big kind of slap in the face to D&D Beyond. Not so much Roll20 in them. Like, I feel like D&D Beyond is in a different category than all of those other VTTs, but it really shouldn't be. I don't know why, other than they have the word D&D in there, and they do a really great product. I'm not trying to say that, but like, I was like, I don't think that Roll20 gets the kind of like sass from Wizards of the Coast like D&D Beyond does.
Well, and let me give you another example that this made me think of this whole thing. This is like the doom and gloom part. I played a game called Marvel Heroes, which was a top-down Diablo-like game for Marvel characters and superheroes. And it was by the company was Gazillion, who created. David Brevik, who did Diablo 1 and 2, was the main programmer for that, was in on that. And they were building this awesome game called Marvel Heroes. And it goes for a long time. They get like an 8 or 9, 10-year run. They're adding characters every couple months, and it's a super fun game. Marvel gets bought by Disney. Game shut down. They no longer can afford the license to keep the Marvel license, because now that it's under Disney, guess what? How much that Marvel license is worth now? Those lawyers are like,
oh, by the way, we charge 4,000%.
We can't afford
more.
it.
Yeah,
shut that game down. So I wonder if the same thing happens where we go to a new version, company's doing really well. You guys want 6th edition for your thing. Here's the new price because of how popular we are right now. Because we negotiated that other price with D&D Beyond back when it was starting to get popular, but maybe had not hit its peak yet. Mm-hmm. We're at its peak now, and we're in renegotiation time. That might be too much for what D&D Beyond can do. Maybe they can't meet that. So then what happens? Do they have to stick with what they have and then they're done? But they're looking at other games and they're looking at other things. So it's smart that they need to diversify.
Beyond, they're branching out. They bought Cortex, and they're making that Dragon Prince game. And I think it was a direct response to things
are shifting.
Yeah, like you're not gonna let us just keep doing this, like I thought we were partners, and it's like no, you're just doing a little bit of stuff for us. But
and the idea that a license deal now, 5 years from now, if it's everybody's been doing good and everything's been popular and it's been rising and rising and rising, that new license deal is going to be double, triple, quadruple what that first one was. So can you still sustain it? And I mean, Disney could come in and buy Hasbro for all we know, and then everything gets renegotiated again. Google comes in and wants a game company or whatever, and Amazon's building games. Maybe Amazon wants tabletop RPGs. They could come in and renegotiate everything and do the same thing. So I think it's interesting to see where we're going. Are we getting 6? Are we getting 5.5? Who's going to control the narrative of that marketing? When are they going to start trying to control the narrative, and when do we find out for sure? I'm excited. I saw on Twitter a lot of people that were down, weren't excited about a new version, kind of were like, what's, with the version that we have right now. They're
Well,
definitely
that
the
is the
fans
life
of the version
cycle
now.
of a gamer who likes
Yeah.
D&D. Like, what?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go play D&D when it was cool. Like,
Yeah, I'm excited. I love new stuff. I love the idea that we might get new things. I love the idea that we might get a new combat system. We might get a new magic system. We might get a refined, maybe not new, maybe not different, but refined or well thought out now that we're, 9-10 years into it at this point. So it's time to, and I like the idea that there's a 50th anniversary. This is the thing that kept hitting us, and we've talked about this before. If you're going to go and do something big, wouldn't you do it on your 50th? Like, you don't do it on your 49th year anniversary or your 54th year anniversary. You do something big on your 50th. So if you're going to do something,
I think they're going to re-release like every edition of D&D.
God, that'd be
and
cool.
I think it's and I was just thinking like, oh, they'll re-release it, but now that you were kind of saying that OSR stuff, I'm like, oh yeah,
let's take a shot at them
like,
too.
That's a big market, and so I'm sure they're just like, why aren't we in that market?
Why aren't we the top dog in the?
Well,
OSR
and I say it's a big market. It probably isn't.
Market.
It's probably not a huge market at all, but like,
it's got to be a chunk.
But OSR is big. Like, lots of people like
DCC
OSR.
is, I felt, has a pretty big community.
Yeah, I don't know if DCC is OSR for me. I guess it is, but
it is. Yeah,
I think if it's its own
Renaissance
thing, but I don't know.
All right, so moving on. So you get that bombshell. We're only probably 15, 20 minutes in. I don't remember. I didn't put the timestamps in. And then they talk to us about, we got a new gift set coming out, which are all the rules, and we get the first name monsters of the multiverse, which is Mordenkainen's monster, and that's kind of bringing in the monster books. The Volos, the Tashas, the stuff like that.
No, the Volos, the Mordenkainens.
Tasha stuff, I think, is in that.
Does Tasha's have monsters? I thought it was just game mechanics.
But I think they're bringing it into that book, I thought.
No, because it's
You're getting
Xanathar's, Tasha's, and Mordenkainen's
right. I'm sorry, I was reading it wrong.
Monsters of the Multiverse, yeah. So.
Yeah. All in a 3-book case. The cases look really nice.
The special editions look really cool, like those covers. So yeah.
So I'm thinking that's going to be pretty good.
And that comes out January 25th. They were
trying for this year.
There's COVID. It's just the world's on fire, so they're like, it's just not going to get out by Christmas.
Shipping from printers.
So, yeah.
2 cover versions. I liked both covers. The white slip cases looked really good though.
Yeah.
And basically with those 3, if you wanted to get in, and I don't know how much those will be. I think, did they give us a price on those? Oh, they did, because they told us it was $150 or $160 is what they told us. There was a 3-book set coming out. That's it. That was announced. We know what the 3-book set is now, that they had been talking, that Amazon had leaked the day before. That's what it was. Amazon had a page up that said there's $100 and something book coming, so we were all wondering, was this going to be when it got announced, and it did. So 3 books, and you can play all 5e to your heart's content. At that point, you have everything you need, and they're actually not just reprints. There's actually changes and editing things going on in Xanathar's and Tasha's also.
Yeah,
so it wasn't just a
all
direct
of the
reprint.
errata will be in there, obviously, but there's
format changes too. There were some changes.
Yeah. And I know that they showed a lot of the art from the Magic the Gathering Forgotten Realms set, that they're repurposing that art in the Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse, to just give some more stuff. But they're also adding that spell action, because they were like, and it is, I will admit to this, it is very difficult when you're like, okay, he's got these spells. Oh, I need to open this book and see what the spells do, and I'm trying to do all of this. Meanwhile, your players are just like, when can I counterspell? Because I know you're looking up spells. Monsters will be getting a spell action or a casting action or something. So they'll have spell-like abilities in their stat blocks listed, as opposed to just having the spell straight up. And that led to the internet going like, well, can you counterspell that? And everyone was like, is counterspell useless? And then other people were like, counterspell was terrible design to begin with. Like, we should just get rid of it. And I was like, yes. And then I was so happy because Matt Colville was like, it's like bullcrap design. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I hate counterspell. And I just wanted to have somebody else agree with me.
So we know there will be a 50th anniversary version special edition for all of 5e. So there's going to be some books that we get to see that you can buy if you want 50th anniversary edition books, which sound really cool. I'm sure we'll have great artwork. in the Monsters of the Multiverse, 250 monsters, 30 playable races. But again, these are going to be the ones that are system agnostic. So I assume we get ones that could appear anywhere, but we might not get ones that are very specific. Like I think you said the good one for Eberron was the Warforged.
Yeah, you won't have the
I'm
Warforged.
wondering, I bet Warforged isn't in there because that's a very Eberron thing. Right?
Yeah, so no Warforged. You probably won't see like Strahd's stat block in there, things like that. Like I'm trying to think of anything else that's very specific to but you'll see like a basilisk, and things like that. Probably a whole slew of devils and demons, angels and stuff like that are just like, these just exist. So
monsters getting bonus actions, or like you had just talked about, or more actions. I mean, Jeremy did a good talk about what would happen is they would create a, let's say they created a necromancer, and in that they gave it a CR 12. He was saying it was easy because you gave them all these spells that if you didn't pick the quintessential ones, you would that creature actually would only play as maybe like a CR 5 at that point, because you made kind of poor decisions and you forgot the cool things that this thing could do that really made it the CR 12 in the first place, right? So he said they wanted to streamline, give them abilities so you don't have to do spells at all if you don't want to. Just like you can do this cool ability, you can do this cool ability, you can do this cool ability this many times a day and be done. Or they're just going to list out the spells that are the quintessential spells for them to be able to do, and not have spell slots and not have big
if you
spell
think about
lists.
You're absolutely right, because you're looking at this and you're just like, I don't know, do I use this? Like, unless you have a very fundamental understanding of that monster and the situation, I feel like it's always going to be hindsight. At the end of the day, when they kill the monster, the necromancer, really quickly, you're going to you're going to replay that fight in your head that night and be like, oh, if I'd done this, it would have been more difficult. Whereas now, if they remove all the extra stuff, you look at a stat block and you're like, okay, I can do 1, 2, and 3, and all all of those are going to keep that monster at CR 12. You know, like,
and there'll be things in there like
just gonna
Cloak
be
of
like
Shadow
easier for the dungeon master.
Yeah, there'll be cool named ability stuff that they're doing too that gives them more flavor, I think, too.
Yeah.
Because it'd be like, oh, they can do one like that necromancer one. Maybe they have an ability that a zombie can throw itself in front of an attack a couple of different times in any given round, so that can absorb one full attack coming in. There's already another monster creature that does that. I think it's like the kobold one or the kobold leader, where kobolds can jump in front of him getting hit, and it basically, so you can just kind of negate that one big paladin strike. Nice. Because all of a sudden a kobold had jumped in front and took it for him, that type of thing. Or, so you could come up with lots of cool abilities like, locusts or swarms, fly out, or something gets obscuring mist comes out from the necromancer. Ways for them to mess with a party that you can use, and it'll be right there in the stat block for you to go, oh, this is cool. He uses the curse of the 9 daggers or something, and something happens. Or so I think that's going to be fun, and I think that will make monsters more interesting than they've been. I think the stat block kind of harmed
at least
some
caster
types
ones,
of creatures. Yeah.
Caster monsters.
So I think that's pretty cool. Make it easier for monsters to hit at its regular CR. And they said more adventure anthologies are on the way. They said they've always gotten good survey feedback on those. So the adventures they put out, like Candlekeep,
Yawning
I
Portal.
would say Yawning Portal's a
Tales
good
of the
one.
Yawning Portal, and
I always think Saltwater.
Ghost of
You
Salt
tell
Marsh.
me the right one. Ghost of Saltmarsh. It's just saltwater to me. That's another good one. So I think that's cool. They'll bring
it's
in
okay.
some more
We
of
run a
that.
D&D show, everybody. We know what we're talking about.
Exactly. And then the bomb. This is the thing. This is where, like, as in Ted's word, I told you so. Or, or I called it. He kept saying, I called it, is what he kept saying. I'm like, we were all calling it, Ted. Settle down there. There's a lot of us calling it. But Chris starts talking about they have finally been given the reins to create, or they're working on right now. They don't know if they will be published, because they keep saying this thing that they work on a bunch of material, but not everything is published.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what's
he made
not
it
been
sound
published?
really good where, they're creative people. And so I think they have that idea of like, wouldn't this be cool? And they start writing it down, and then somebody looks at it and it's like, is anyone going to buy this? And you're like, I don't know. You're right. This is just Chris's cool brain came up with like a fun scenario or like something, but like, I don't know if somebody would buy this. And so, or like, could we incorporate that into a book,
Or do we add it to something that already exists, or does it fit with
yeah.
something? But what we have confirmed is they are working on 2 brand new settings. They're getting the chance to create something we've never seen. These are these designers getting to create a world. And a couple of them, and who knows if we get
for
both.
the rule set that they made,
we get one,
which is something we've wanted for a long time, me and you. Like, I think
oh,
that would be
definitely.
really cool.
Because the worlds that we've gotten, the Forgotten Realms, are the Ed Greenwood world, right? They're the 3.5 designers and 4E designers that had stayed on had created Forgotten Realms. Basically, they're the fathers of Forgotten Realms. Gygax is the father of Greyhawk, right? What's his name is the father of Eberron.
Baker.
Keith Baker is the father of Eberron. We haven't got to see Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford, the father of this setting. And I wanted that. I really wanted to see what this crew that we have now could create in 2020, 2021, 2022, or whenever we might get something like that.
Well, and I just want a setting where like all the races,
all the lore is new.
Like there's a reason that
new.
tieflings are here. And it's not just that we like kind of slap it into the Forgotten Realms, or like there's a reason Dragonborn exist. And it's not like, well, we'll just kind of shimmy it into the Forgotten Realms. Like it's really cool to have that. And a lot of people I saw were kind of upset by this because they're like, again, their mindset, why are you wasting resources on something new when you could remake Dark Sun or something like that? And it's like, well, you don't know if you don't like this though. Like this could be the coolest thing in the world. Like honestly, just give it a chance. Like, yeah, it's not Spelljammer. They're not saying Spelljammer, but like it could be really, really cool. We literally don't know. And so like, let them work on it,
Was there, Shadzar was talking about, wasn't James Wyatt and Chris Perkins setting the points of light from 4E? So I didn't play 4E, so I don't know any of the settings that they covered during the whole 4th edition. That's like, it's the weirdest thing for me being, we're the Saturday morning D&D show, and I have an amnesia gap for the years of 4th edition because I didn't play any of it. I didn't know any of it. I bought none of the books of it. I've never played any of it. I didn't hear stories of any of it. Nobody talked to me about the 4E games they were playing in. I heard 3.5 stuff. I've been there since Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and Basic. I'm here full force for 5E, but 4E has been such a hole in my whole knowledge base.
Again, they wanted to have something brand new, even though they control Forgotten Realms and everything else. But Nentir Vale was the campaign setting, and I don't know specifically if Perkins like wrote the stories or anything, but he was very active in 4E, and so I'm sure like he was working there that whole time that they were creating 4E and the Nentir Vale campaign setting. But that was the 4E setting that changed a lot of the cosmology. And then
you still have Monty Cook there at that time, right?
I thought he left with
during
third,
the beginning of 4.
but maybe
I thought it was
was
at the
there
end
before.
of 3, beginning of 4, maybe.
Yeah. But the Nentir Vale campaign setting, what they wanted to do is they changed the whole cosmology, and then they tried to make all the other campaign settings fit that new cosmology that they created. So that was another reason that people didn't like it, is because, growing up, it's like, well, we had Planescape and we had the Great Wheel and we had all this other stuff, and then the realms fit into there, and Spelljammer kind of fit into there, and there was all these things that worked. And then Nentir Vale was like, oh yeah, throw that all out. Those don't exist anymore. We got the Astral Plane, we got the Elemental Chaos, and then we have these little points everywhere. And you're somewhere in the middle. Oh, and there's a Feywild now. And it was like, what? So with 5e, they went back because nobody liked this. Or very few people. But it's a cool idea. Like, it has a lot of fun mythology. Specifically, like, where the Abyss came from and things like that. It had a lot of, like, the beginning, the creation of the world. I'm really curious about Fizban's book because it talks about like the world before we knew it, and I wonder if that's the first step in their new mythology going forward for a new campaign setting. So,
well, here's the word they threw around in that a lot. They kept saying a ton the word multiverse. So to me, the next set of books, the next edition, the next slipcases are going to reinforce this idea of multiverse, and I think they're going to dive into that more so that all campaign settings can exist and don't need to be explained in any other way except, hey, we live in a D&D multiverse. Of course there's a Dark Sun. Of course there's a Spelljammer. Of course there's a Greyhawk.
Of course there's a Ravnica.
We're in a multiverse. Yeah. All Magic the Gathering exists. We're in a multiverse, you know. And why not? Why not embrace that? Marvel's embraced it to high acclaim. They're doing the What If series. You know, you're seeing all kinds of the multiverse stuff, and they're going to start doing. So why not jump onto that same bandwagon? I think it's a good way to open up the game. So D&D multiverse, they said a ton. These would be the first brand new setting since Eberron, confirmed. None of the other ones had been, and they said testing should be starting. So I wonder if we'll get a D&D next phase.
Oh,
will we
for
get
a year
a
at
D&D
least.
test phase that we could all jump in and do? Will they do another contest? They did the Dungeon Masters contest. They did Eberron contest. Do you think they'll ever come back around and do another community contest to help build content? Because why wouldn't you? It's like free content for you at that point.
Well, but that's the problem. Is there's a lot of
There's a lot of
and I
current
think rightfully
pushback
so,
on that.
but there's been a lot of pushback on that, especially with like, we're going to have an art competition.
But we get all
Everybody
there.
make us something really cool.
Yeah.
And then we'll own the rights to it, and we can look at it and be like, no, this one. And then we'll give that guy like $1,000. And it's like, but you just gave $1,000 for like 100, like way more art than $1,000.
But you're in a contest. Yeah. You're trying to win the prize.
So I don't know. And there's a lot of, like Keith Baker loves Eberron, and he's not allowed to do a lot of stuff with it. Yeah. And I think that's another thing. People might be like, I don't think you should steal from people. I think, and maybe stealing's the wrong thing because he signed up for that and everything, but I don't know. And it has like launched his career, even though he's tied to Eberron, even though he's not.
It's not like it wasn't a bad deal for them. They profited off it too. So I wonder if they could go back to that pot. Could they go back to that?
And would Eberron be as popular if it wasn't part of
a community building contest?
Well, part of that Wizards of the Coast just
marketing
just promoting it,
Yeah.
Because like it is really cool, but you're right. I don't know if people
Eberron could have been Pathfinder.
So
would it have been as popular? Eberron could have been its own company. Yeah.
And I'm even thinking would Eberron be popular if Keith was just trying to kickstart it today, And people are like, I don't know, I guess. Who are you? Yeah.
So I wonder. So to me, that was the bombshell. It's just like one after the other. There was one in there. They showed us. He talked about a new book that was going to scare players. They were going to be afraid to go there. They were going to be, and we already had, like Ravenloft. So this started making me think we might get a Shadowfell campaign book or a Shadowfell setting book.
Yeah, I was wondering if Shadowfell, because they've been talking about the Domains of Dread a lot, and they specifically said Van Richten's Guide is in, or all of those Domains of Dread are in the Shadowfell. They're part of the Shadowfell. Mm-hmm. And something we haven't mentioned, but there was a Feywild supplement that came out in tandem with Wild Beyond the Witchlight on the DMsGuild. Mm-hmm. And it's $8. I bought it. I flipped through it. It's really good. It's 30-some pages, but it's $8, and all the profits go to Child's Play charity. Mm-hmm. But within there, like, it almost felt like this belonged in Wild Beyond the Witchlight. It's the exact same thing that was in Van Richten's Guide, but for the Feywild. How do you create a domain of delight? How do you create an archfey villain that is controlling this domain? So with that, I'm wondering if they're going to create a fleshed out Shadowfell, I don't know, or do they just keep it with certain domains? one of my favorite 4 ebooks is Gloomrot, which is the big city in the Shadowfell. And I was wondering if that was going to
that could be cool.
do something. Yeah. If they would like remake Gloomrot basically for 5e.
And I think Chris has always brought, characters from the Shadowfell. He's used Shadowfell in a lot of his games. I feel like I could see him pushing to get a Shadowfell book at some point, a book that really covers it. We even have wasn't there even a Patreon patron you can get as a warlock from the main person in the Shadowfell? I'm forgetting her name off the top of my
Raven
head.
Queen, yeah.
Raven Queen. Then we get a full fleshed out book that has a Raven. That would even be cool. As Raven Queen is on the cover. It's her book, the Raven Queen's book of Shadowfell or something.
Raven Queen's Guide to the Supernatural.
Whatever.
Jez points out that it could be a book set in the Abyss.
That could be.
We visited the 9 Hells, but we haven't really permeated the infinite layers of the Abyss. So
yeah. So we know something's coming that I think sounds exciting. Could be pretty fun. Then they tease a very hand-drawn sketch of a space hamster, a giant space hamster, which apparently is exactly the same thing as a regular, as a regular hamster, which has been the joke, the ongoing joke. If you didn't know it, Boo. Everybody's speculating on what's behind Boo and what it means. I'm full on the Spelljammer boat. I think that's basically Spelljammer confirmed, but other people think it could be something else.
People were asking how popular is Starfinder for Paizo? And I don't know.
But
I know I have some patrons that play
do.
it and they love it. They love Starfinder and they play it but if you think about it, that's a very untapped part of D&D is just the science part, science fantasy.
Yeah.
Because you have, Star Trek and Star Wars and all this other stuff and Starfinder, and people are going that route to play in a science fiction style game as opposed to using D&D. So I was wondering if they're going to create a new version of D&D, but using the framework we're all familiar with, but instead I'm going to be like a ratfolk tinkerer that hacks the mainframe and we're playing our game of planetoids and probes or something. I don't know.
And it has to be the most popular thing they see, or the most, every time they run a live stream, every time they do any type of post, hundreds, thousands of people, Spelljammer confirmed, Spelljammer
it's
this,
become
Spelljammer
a joke
that,
now
Spelljammer
that I'm wondering if,
but they want
they're do we release it?
Why would you not release what your people are asking for? Your greatest fan, Jordan, is asking for stuff, and you're just no, I don't want to do that thing.
Yeah, I don't
want to do your most popular thing you guys are asking for. I've got all this other cool stuff for you.
Yeah, I just don't know about Spelljammer because I feel like it's become a joke now, but at the same time, you're right. So many people are hollering for it. I don't know.
We want. Who doesn't want ships fighting in space and mind flayer ships that you're going to board and raid and going to different worlds and all of the drama that you can bring with that? I mean, there are people playing Spelljammer campaigns right now. I've heard stories and they're talking about cool stuff that happens in their space whales and whatever, all their Star Trek fantasies being born out, even though they still get to be a paladin or a wizard or a whatever. Why would they go to space? They have the magic to make it possible, so they could. And just if your community cries for it so much all the time, it's not like they're always Dark Sun. Everybody's Dark Sun. You don't see that spread across everywhere. So that's not the campaign you jump on. It's not even Dragonlance. People aren't even shouting out Dragonlance every time they do a live stream. It's Spelljammer all the time.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a meme. But I'm not. I'm fully shouting it out from the heavens because I want it.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. I look at this as I think Dungeons and Dragons wants to go into here's our sci-fi version of our game.
Yeah.
And they're and maybe that'll bridge the gap. So maybe they release their sci-fi version of the game and then they release Spelljammer as a fantasy alternative using the sci-fi rules. I don't know. And then you could combine the two, I could be like the so-and-so hacker, kind of like Dungeon Crawl Classics has Mutant Crawl Classics. It's literally the exact same like game, but it has a
Space
instead
mutants.
of spells and stuff, you have mutant powers that you use.
Laser guns.
Yeah,
Yeah. All
and
kinds
so
of cool
you
stuff.
can combine those two genres if you want. And so I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if they do that. So
Well, even Paizo has really made an effort. This year is the year they're making an effort to remind everybody that Starfinder and Pathfinder are about science fantasy. It's not their science fiction setting. It's their science
you're right.
fantasy.
It's not Mothership. It's not like Alien. Yeah.
There is magic in their space world. There are people slinging spells in their Pathfinder, in their Starjammer, in their Starfinder world. So.
Yeah, but some people on Twitter were just like, I think that means they're going to do like a modern campaign setting because they were like, we're going to take D&D where it's never gone before. And I was like, I don't
That would
think
be weird.
I mean, modern would be okay, but like I really think you want to tap into that sci-fi
Yeah,
market.
I can play a CIA agent. What? That's what I need in my. What? I don't know. Maybe. All right. So that was about as much as I had found. Some quotes there, like D&D will go where we've never gone before.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But it was all vague. It was all talking around it. There was no officially said, here's the name of this, here's exactly what it is. It's all about more information coming in the future.
Yeah.
More information soon. Here's the things we're working on, but you only vaguely know their shape. You don't know really what it is. So, I don't know. Did you see anything else out there as far as D&D news from that?
No, not from the live stream. Just lots of speculation, and I'm curious. Obviously, like I like D&D. I like the stuff. We've seen this countless times before historically. Like games get to a certain point, and it's like I want to release more stuff. I gotta release a new edition. So.
Even computer games are that way. Board games are that way. Either you're building a new board game, or you're building another edition of a board game, or you're revisiting. I mean, that's the game. I can't build one game and then I'm done, because that can't sustain me for 20, 50 years. I got to keep creating. I got to keep building.
Yeah. Well,
tabletop role-playing games
unless
is the
it's
same.
chess, I guess. I'm the guy who invented chess.
Yeah, but you're not getting any money from it.
Not anymore, no.
Yeah. I'm going to switch. We had our notes here, but I think it's more important. There was another piece of news that dropped this week. Critical Role, Campaign 3.
Yeah, which is funny. I don't know if you saw, but it was Kotaku or Gizmodo released this information a day early.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it went on Gizmodo. Or I think it was. It's one of those webs. They're all owned by the same parent company, but they were like, "Oh, someone at Gizmodo's getting fired," because they released this article that was like, "Hey, Critical Role's new campaign is set here," and as you saw on the live feed, and it was like, "Oh, that's dated for tomorrow. This hasn't happened yet," and so it got taken down pretty quick. But I saw some people talking about it. But yeah, Critical Role Season 3 is going to take place in I think it's called Marquette, which is another continent that is south of Tal'Dorei. Mm-hmm. And it is going to follow the adventure, or follow exactly after Abria's game that she ran, that little like series. So
so I did have the Tal'Dorei book open.
No one can see.
Nope,
no one can see.
Nobody can see it. Stupid filter. It looks like it's a desert continent. It looks like it starts with a big port city, then a range of mountains, and then a vast sea of desert and sand. And out in the middle of that desert is a pretty big city called Ankh-Harel.
Yeah, so this might be the Middle Eastern kind of subcategory, the Al-Qadim, if you will.
They're the deserts of Marquette stand as the echo of a once lush landscape that housed a prominent civilization during the Age of Arcanum. And that was kind of like their super magic age that they had their super war and it destroyed the world kind of thing, I believe. The war that ravaged reduced the lands to sand and ash, burying a multitude of long-sealed secrets that many factions now compete to uncover and claim. So kind of like the sunken cities or the destroyed wastelands that if you dig deep enough, you find these other kingdoms or civilizations that existed and have power, great power hidden in tombs and crypts and things, I assume.
Interesting that a Desert
Dead
World
cities.
is coming out the same time as Dune.
Oh,
Oh, weird.
Interesting.
Sandworms, you say? Spice. Interesting.
Spice.
I said this on campaign 2. I was going to start and I was going to listen, but boy, like 4 or 5 hour episodes are hard for me to go through.
5 episodes in,
yeah.
and I didn't continue. I checked back in every now and then, watched a few episodes here or there. I watched a little bit towards the end, and I did watch the wrap-up campaign video. But same with Exandria. I watched like 1 or 2 episodes, fell out of it, watched the last one, a little bit of it, skimmed through it, and then watched the wrap-up. I think what I'm always the most curious about is the start, and what characters they create is the part I want to see for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's a special way to see this new unraveling campaign for the first time too.
Oh yeah, So the big announcement, I guess, that was on Gizmodo and stuff is that the first episode is going to be streamed to movie theaters, like a live fandom event kind of a thing.
Yeah, so you can go to the theater and watch it.
It'll also be on Twitch and YouTube, from what I hear. But yeah, it's going to be on in theaters, so you can go hang out, and that's a good way to meet other Critical Role fans. You know. It's kind of funny. Like, I remember going to a Doctor Who fandom event, and it's like, oh my gosh, my people.
Yeah,
like,
everybody's here.
Where have you been my whole life? Loves it. Like, so, it's a good way to meet other like-minded people who play the game probably and really like Critical Role and things like that. So, kind of cool. Obviously, stay safe with COVID out there, but I think movie theaters are reopening and they're trying to do something cool.
Yeah,
so.
get your vaccines so that you can be safe.
But yeah, and I think they're also going to do like a 3-week long. I don't. This isn't in the article that I found, but my friends were talking that they were nervous of too many guest DMs or something. Because they're like, I watched the show for Matt. Like, Matt as the DM is what draws me to the show.
They said they're taking 1 week out of every month off.
Yeah, and that was
it.
So
they're going to play games, but he needed an extra. He explained it as, it helps me with having an extra week to prep these big games.
Just to give him some time, something else. He just wants a week off. So the main campaign will still be Matt. But they're going to do little side campaigns or play different games or something on that off week. So and I think that's fine. I was like, that's good for him. And honestly, with Colville's push lately to play different games or different RPGs, and Z on YouTube did a whole thing about Blades in the Dark. It wouldn't surprise me if this is the new direction a lot of those people are going, where they're like, if you like D&D, you should also maybe try this. Like, there's a lot of other fun games out there. Like, you know? So, go call up Lucian and play Masks, a new generation.
Yes, please. Please. So that was a cool stuff there. I will, we had a date there, October 21st. So we just hit October. So, almost 20 days from now, we will get to be there. I'll probably be there for the first, because I want to know, I want to find out what their characters are. I don't know if they'll release that early or if we only find them out on the night of. Yeah, they did it for season 2. We had to watch the episode, and then they dragged it out way too long. I'm like, just tell me who you're playing. yeah. Just who are the characters? I want to know. I'm always curious. So, Pathfinder news. I'll throw it in there real quick. Man, look how far we went already. I'll give you guys a little Pathfinder news. One of the things I saw that Pathfinder's doing, we've been bringing this up, is they have something called the Iconics. And the Iconics at first had started out as their quintessential picture of a class, a character in a class, right? So they had an iconic paladin, or they had an iconic cleric, or they had an iconic this. They've become characters in their own set, and they've started to actually not just be a visual representation of their class, but they're characters and people that exist in canon and have stories about them, and they show up in adventure paths, and so they've released, because they have 2 new classes coming out pretty soon that they're working on. They started talking about the iconics that are going to represent them. So I thought that was kind of cool. An idea that there's this quintessential character that represents this class, like would Dritz be the quintessential ranger? Would who of the famous Forgotten Realms people that we've met would be a quintessential this? Who could be raised up as, this is the cool warlock, or this is the cool wizard, or this is the cool quintessential paladin. So they call them the Iconics. They bring them up. They have a whole page out that you can go take a look at them. It's got really good artwork that goes with them. Usually their outfits are very detailed and intricate. They have cool backstories. And they just give you a feel for what Pathfinder is, because Pathfinder does have, in my mind, a little bit different of an art style than what D&D releases in their books. Yeah. So D&D has a very visual look to it, and I believe Pathfinder has found their own. They did a good job of saying we're similar, but we're unique also. We're different, and we have our own flair to it. And in some ways, I like some of the Pathfinder artwork on certain things than D&D artwork, because you can look at certain monsters that are similar, and you might like one more than I like some of the Pathfinder stuff is really, really cool. And they're doing really good stuff over there. They're releasing lots of books. They announced all that stuff over the last week after Gen Con, so if you're really interested in that, I'll keep bringing stuff to us. Little tidbits and snippets that I pick up off the Paizo website, because it's amazingly enough, they're as large as Wizards of the Coast as far as what books they put out. They're putting out the same volume. They're putting out the same number of supplements. They're putting out the same number of adventure paths and things you can play. And so it's amazing that there's another company putting out that volume that matches the big dog. And, Jordan, can you hear it?
I can.
Oh my God.
I want to say Jeff in chat here, he said that his new print theory is that it's going to be a spiral bound book, which I was like, oh, like a textbook that lays flat at the table. Ooh, that would be very nice. Thank you guys so much for joining us this wonderful day. We're going to say goodbye, as it is the end of our show, and the siren has told us that. So,
well, you should tell us about your games you played.
Oh, my games? Whatever. I don't know. Okay, I played a couple games. I finished an Eberron game, which was a lot of fun. And if you're curious about that, you can go over to search for The Mighty Dungeon by Kugo. And I don't think they're uploaded to YouTube yet, but they'll be there. And that's my goblin swarm ranger named Zix. We got to level 5 and we finished, and it was a lot of fun. Kugo's a really good dungeon master. I'm going to run a Halloween Kids on Bikes game, and he's going to be a player. So you can watch out for that VOD before Halloween at some point. People have been busy, so we haven't started Dungeon Crawl Classics, but that should happen tomorrow. So we're going to visit the island of DCC, or the island of Hot Springs Island, using DCC. And then I went out and bought Witchlight, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, because I was at the gaming store buying Magic cards, and I saw it there, and it looked cool, so I picked it up. But I have not read it yet. I've only flipped through it, but it looks like a lot of fun. And I actually had a lot of friends read it and said that they really think it's one of their best adventures that they've written. And I was like, well, then I'm okay. You sold me. I'll pick it up and I'll give it a read. So it could be a lot of fun. But I've been reading Worlds Without Number, which is a really interesting OSR book that has a lot of world building. When I was building my world, I wish I had that book, because you can roll all kinds of ancient civilizations and cities and problems, and it's pretty cool if you're doing some campaign building. So, yeah. What about you, Lucian? What are you working on? Or you still got a noise?
Yeah,
still got a siren. Okay. I'm gonna live somewhere that has a giant horn every day for no reason. Is there an emergency? Oh no, they're just sounding the horn. Yeah, but for 20 minutes? Yeah, it just goes. Yeah, oh yeah, you'll love the Midwest. It's wonderful here. Down over there, yeah, like Wisconsin and North Dakota and Michigan. Oh, we have all these horns for no reason. It's great.
It is still going. Whoever's on the horn, he's just like, I'm going to go for 5 minutes. I don't care about these people.
It's so...
There it goes. Finally.
It's so random. Why do you have that?
It's on the first Saturday of every month they test it. So this is the first Saturday of October, so they test it. I don't get it.
What are you doing in games, Lucian?
What are you doing? Hey, Jordan, I am test playing the campaign setting me and you have been super excited about talking about a lot. Put some notes down. about the cliff or the edge. We're still
Yeah.
trying to come up with the precipice, the cool name for it. World's End.
The Great Fall.
Something like that. Yeah, the Great Fall. Yeah. Because I wanted to see really what players would do when they're presented with this obstacle, and just see and I made them 10th level, so they have plenty of options, magic items, magic ideas, but what are they going to come up with to tackle this? And I still like the idea that it's a vertical hex crawl in some ways. I'm not going to dive into the vertical hex crawl part of it for this first test, but it was mostly to see how players who don't know about it experience it when they hear about it for the first time, and then how they try to tackle it, so we have a better idea of what will work and what won't work.
Yeah, and like playing through that is the best way to write it.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got to come up with something creative about this, rather than trying to anticipate whatever they're trying to do. You just have to come up with it. And so that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be really cool.
For this one too, I let them do their character creation, but I also let them create. What I'm doing is there's a large empire, then there's a giant river like a Mississippi that runs north to south, and then there's this dark forest, and this empire wants this forest tamed. And so what they've set up is called the Border Princes, and they've set up these lands, and they propped up these leaders and said, we are paying you to tame these lands. Here's the laws. You cannot fight the other Border Princes or we'll tear you up. But if you push west, or I think I'm pushing east, push east and tame those lands, then we're going to continue to support you and help you become rich and help your community. So you can build it any way you want. You can have your own laws on the other side of that river. And they're also doing it as the buffer, so anything that comes and attacks them hits the Border Princes first, and then the Empire has time to deal with whatever's coming from the east. So the game picks up that the players are a player in that, but they also have a leader that they follow. And I'm letting them build the leader, and like the barony or the kingdom or the principality or the area they get is built around their idea of what the civilization is about. So one has already created one that's a conglomeration of humans and elves that have come together and are really making half-elves a prominent thing. Like they want more half-elves, and half-elves are good, and in the two cultures mixing is a good thing, and it only makes both cultures stronger. So that's what they kind of in their little area. So it's interesting to see how each of the players are going to create their own, and then they're going to find this thing out east and see what actually happens. So I think that'll be kind of fun.
Cool. Man,
So very
it'll be
fun,
fun.
very
Is that
cool.
streamed or?
Nah, I was going to keep the pressure off as far as putting anybody on cameras or doing anything. Just let it kind of flesh out. It is a Roll20 game, so everything will be tracked. I have a Discord that's going to track RP stuff. And then I'll probably run more tests later on, maybe with even other people. And I think those ones will be the ones that get streamed, like a little bit down the line from the testing phase of it. Run one or two parties through the idea. Maybe run a low-level party at one point, this 10th level party at one point, and then maybe do one that has the hex crawl vertical part of it in it, and really see how that would work and how you could play it out and do it. So, and one of those I'm sure then would be a streamed one.
Cool.
Or at least recorded.
I love it. I'm excited to see where that goes.
Yeah. And I'm playing a ton of Pathfinder. I'm playing a ton of New World right now.
Oh, video games, yeah.
And I'm playing a ton of No Man's Sky, all three things at the
Oh,
same
wow,
time.
yeah. So go check out your
all that
Twitch
stuff.
if you're not already there.
Playing a bunch.
Sounds fun.
Now I'm done.
I should play.
Now take us out.
I should play No Man's Sky. I've been playing a lot of.
They just started their new expedition, so
I
that's why I
know
jumped back
it's
in.
such a good game now. It was not a good game, but it is such a good game now. But I've been playing a lot of Magic the Gathering Arena, which I need to stop because it's just like I just need to stop. But play other things, write some books. That's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Thank you for the extra long, awesome show that we had today. We will see you next week with another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. Take care.
Bye-bye.